What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Modern Warfare. In today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the SCAR 17. And with the SCAR, we get a base damage profile of 35-32, which is actually the same as the AK, however, this applies to everywhere in the body aside from the head. Whereas with the AK, that also gets a boosted upper chest multiplier that the SCAR doesn't get. So this means the SCAR is going to be a 3 to 4 shot kill anywhere in the body. Doesn't matter if you're shooting him in the toe or the upper chest. As for headshots though, we do get a headshot multiplier of 1.6, which means our headshot damage profile is now 56-51, and this means at any range with the SCAR, all you need is 2 headshots to get a kill. Our rate of fire with the SCAR is 600 rounds per minute, which is a little bit faster than the AK-47, which means our statistical minimum time to kill in the 3-shot kill range is pretty fast at 200 milliseconds, and then at the 4-shot kill range it drops down to 300 milliseconds. So not a bad time to kill at all with the SCAR. However, we also get a time to kill potential, assuming you land those 2 headshots at any range. This time to kill potential is 100 milliseconds, which is ridiculously fast. As for ranges, as you can see here, our 3-shot kill range extends out to about 30 meters, which is a pretty standard range drop-off point for most of the assault rifles in this game. And with the lightweight suppressor, this is reduced by 25%, whereas with the monolithic suppressor, this is increased by 7.5%. Taking this into hardcore game modes, the SCAR 17 is always going to be a 1-shot kill, unless of course you are shooting through some form of cover. As for hipfire, this is pretty much standard for the assault rifle category, nothing out of the ordinary here. And same thing goes with our idle sway. As you can see here, there's definitely a small amount of idle sway. It moves around fairly quickly, but within a very small area. So generally speaking, idle sway shouldn't be an issue for you with this gun. As for recoil, as you can see here, the SCAR kicks upwards and slightly to the right, and it is a very predictable recoil pattern, although it is a fairly strong recoil pattern as well. You definitely have to put some effort in to control this, but at the same time, it doesn't jump like crazy or anything. You can see that, generally speaking, if you start aiming low on your target, you'll just walk your shots right up their body and get a nice, easy kill. This brings us into our handling stats, and our aim down sight time is the slowest in the assault rifle category at 350 milliseconds. This is more like an LMG than an assault rifle when it comes to aim down sight, and this is definitely the biggest downside of this gun. Our sprint out times though are standard for the assault rifle category, so it's not like it's an LMG in that way, it's just the aim down sight time that is slow. Moving on to magazine capacity, this is another downside with the SCAR. Our standard magazine is only 20 rounds with 40 in reserve, and that's not very good for a full auto assault rifle. Having said that, our reload add time is very respectable at 1.44 seconds, or with sleight of hand, you can cut that down to 1.05 seconds. So it doesn't take a super long time to reload, but you will be reloading often due to the small magazine. And finally, for base stats, our movement speed is a little bit on the slow side for assault rifles at 93%, still much faster than LMGs, it's just slightly slower than some of the other assault rifles, and our aim down sight strafe speed is right around standard for assault rifles at 44%. So those are all of the important base stats for the SCAR 17, however, I do want to look at some of the unique attachments, and first off, we're going to start it off with the barrel attachments. And the first barrel you get access to is the ForgeTac 17.2-inch long barrel. With this one, our damage range is increased by 25%, which is a really nice boost to our damage range. We also get added bullet velocity, which is going to help, especially at really long ranges hitting moving targets. Up close, this really has no impact though. And also we get improved recoil control, which if we have a look here, you can definitely see it doesn't have quite as much recoil as the base SCAR. However, it's not really a massive reduction, and I wouldn't say this is necessary by any means. Now, all of those upsides do come at the cost of, first off, your aim down sight time, which is reduced by 1 frame, or it's roughly 5% slower than base, and our movement speed is also slowed down by about 2%. So overall, not a bad barrel, doesn't have extreme downsides by any means, and you do get some nice upsides with it. As for the next one, this is the ForgeTac 20-inch long barrel. And with this one, we have all of the same upsides and downsides, just to different degrees. So our damage range is increased by 40% rather than 25%, which is great. Our bullet velocity is also improved, which is nice at longer ranges. And our recoil control is also improved. And just having a look at that recoil pattern and comparing it to the base, as you can see here, once again, it's a very similar story to the 17.2-inch ForgeTac barrel. It definitely does help your recoil a bit, and it might be a nice choice for you, but at the same time, I don't really feel like it's necessary with this gun. As for the cons on this, it actually has the same reduction to your aim down sight time as the 17.2-inch barrel, so that's just 1 frame or 5% slower. However, our movement speed is noticeably slower than the 17.2-inch barrel. It becomes reduced by roughly 4%, which takes this pretty much in the LMG range when it comes to movement speed. So while you get a massive increase to your range with this, you also get a very noticeable reduction to your movement speed, and this thing pretty much starts handling like an LMG at that point. But with that, this brings us to the final barrel for the SCAR 17, and this is the Forged Tac CQC Pro barrel. With this one, it improves our aim down sight time very noticeably by about 25% or 4 frames at 60 FPS. This brings it much more in line with the other assault rifles in the game, and it actually starts feeling a lot more like an assault rifle when you're using this barrel on it. Additionally, our movement speed is improved by about 2%, which again makes this gun start to feel a lot more like the other assault rifles in-game. Now these upsides do come at the cost of bullet velocity. It is going to be slowed down, so at those longer ranges, you may struggle a bit more to hit moving targets. And also, our recoil control is reduced, which, as you can see here, there's definitely more recoil, and the biggest thing to pay attention to is the first 3 to 4 bullets. There is a much bigger gap when using the Forged Tac CQC between those shots, and this is something that you definitely have to be a bit concerned about. These jumps between shots can really easily throw you off target. And therefore, if you are using this barrel, I do encourage you to use some other attachment like a foregrip, for instance, to cut down on that recoil and try to compensate for this increased recoil. This is an excellent barrel to be using, especially if you want to be more aggressive with the SCAR. You just have to be very aware of that downside. But with that, this takes us into the next set of unique attachments, and this is the extended mag attachments. With the SCAR, we have access to, first off, the 25-round magazine, which is quite a nice boost because the 20-round magazine just doesn't cut it in most situations. And with this one, this does come at the cost of a slower aim down sight time, which, by the way, there is no measurable change at 60 FPS at least. So you don't really have to worry about this reducing your aim down sight time, even though it says it does. However, your movement speed is slowed down by only about 1%, so hardly a noticeable reduction to your movement speed with this. Taking that to the next level though, we also have access to a 30-round magazine, which once again has no measurable change to your aim down sight time, even though it states that it does. So don't worry about this impacting your aim down sight time. However, your movement speed is slowed down by about 3% rather than the 1% of the 25-round magazines, and this is where it starts to become much more noticeable. So definitely a trade-off that you have to consider for using the 30-round magazine. I do highly encourage you guys to use at least one of the extended mag attachments, either the 25 or 30-round magazine. Just be sure you understand those downsides with the movement speed. So now that we have the unique attachments out of the way, let's start getting into some great attachment combinations and recommended class setups. And first up, we have more of an aggressive SCAR setup. This is designed to really combat the downsides of the SCAR to make it a more balanced gun. So with this one, we are using the Forged Tac CQC Pro barrel. And in order to compensate for that increase to the recoil, we're also using both the compensator as well as the Merc foregrip. This actually cuts your recoil down quite a bit and makes it quite an accurate gun. And it's also very snappy, very fast compared to the base SCAR. And on top of this, we've got the 30-round magazine because the 20 rounds just isn't enough if you're dealing with multiple enemies consecutively. And also, we do have the stipple pistol grip, which will help with our sprint out time, as well as a little bit with our aim down sight time on top of what the Forged Tac CQC already does. This particular setup brings the SCAR much more in line with a bunch of the other assault rifles in the game based on my experience with it so far. Taking this into an example class setup, we're using the Desert Eagle as our secondary. We've got EOD, Ghost, as well as Battle Hardened. For our lethal, we've got a C4, and for a tactical, we have a stim shot because this is designed to be more of an aggressive class setup, so the stim is just great for helping you get back into the fight after taking damage. This kind of setup is great for maps like Shoot House or other smaller sort of maps. This gun doesn't really excel at super long ranges when set up like this, but it is great at close to mid-range. As for the next attachment combo, this one's designed more for those mid to longer range fights. It doesn't really excel up close, but the SCAR does handle itself very well at range. With this one, we're using the Forged Tac 17.2-inch barrel, which does give that nice 25% boost to our damage ranges without having the massive downside to our movement speed. On top of this, we're also using a compensator just to cut down that recoil a little bit, since this will be designed for longer range fights, and we want to cut down our recoil as much as possible. We've got the GI Mini Reflex. It's one of my favorite optics to use, and in this situation, since we're challenging people at longer ranges, I do like having an optic on there. We've also once again got that stippled pistol grip to help a bit with our aim down sight time as well as our sprint out time. And finally we have the 25 round extended mag rather than the 30 round extended mag, and the simple reason for this is I didn't want to reduce our movement speed too much because we're reducing it with our barrel already, and therefore stacking that with a 30 round mag would turn this thing basically into an LMG, and we don't want that with this setup. Taking that into an example class, with this one, once again, we're using the Desert Eagle as our secondary and EOD as our perk 1. That is just a complete crutch for me at this point. I see no reason to use anything but EOD, or maybe overkill. But in this case, at least, we're using EOD. We've also got Kill Chain because this is designed more for like ground war, for instance, and going on longer streaks. You're going to be hanging back and picking people off at range, and this playstyle typically allows you to go on those higher streaks. And finally, we've got Shrapnel on here combined with Thermites because this is designed more for ground war, and this is excellent for taking out those tanks. And that just leaves us with our tactical, which is going to be a stun grenade. So with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the SCAR 17. As for my thoughts on this gun, I really feel like it is one of the worst assault rifles in its current state. That's not to say that it's a completely unusable gun or it's absolutely terrible. I just feel like it doesn't really shine in any area. I think the AK-47 outclasses this in pretty much every way, and I just don't see much of a reason to use the SCAR 17 over the other assault rifles. In my opinion, it could use a slight buff in some area. Perhaps aim down sight time, they could cut that down to 300 milliseconds, which would still be on the slow side for assault rifles, but it wouldn't be painfully slow like it currently is. That's just my opinion though. Of course, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think of the SCAR 17? Do you think it's a good gun, bad gun, just fine how it is? And also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.